That was a great story.
Like, Mom, I just peed on the guy.
It's like, I've been waiting for you to get him. Like it was all planned. All right, so let's open up Project Snowman here. Okay, and let's see where we left this off. I think we just did kind of a quick crash course type thing. So let's see, we have our oh, let's go to 75%. Perfect. All right, so we started building our screen here for registering and logging in. Did we make it so you can go from one screen to another? And did we look at segues or anything like that? And that ringing, when you say a little bit, you mean not at all, or you don't remember?
Yeah. Segue switching.
All right, so let's.
You just barely said something about it, but that was it.
All right, so okay, right. So we have, when we register here, the register button goes over to this register screen, and we did that with a control drag to get us over there. So just to show you a little bit of how that works, let me show you the alternative, just so we have both versions of this. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to remove this segue. So if you remember correctly, this segue was created by me doing control click on the register button and just dragging it over here and letting go, and then choosing the action segue. In this case, I'm doing a show. So that created that guy. Now, one thing we can do, so let's just finish this part of it, is let's say I needed to do something on the way from this screen to that screen during the voyage, if you will, okay? In this case, the register thing is probably just the register thing is just a blank screen that's going to have some text fields and stuff on it, so we don't really need to worry about it. But in an event where we're going from one screen to another, maybe we want to pass the username to that second screen so we can show it or something like that, we might need to interject some stuff on the way. So this guy's called a segue. And let me go in here. So I'm going to click on the actual segue, so that guy is highlighted. So this segue goes from our normal view controller to our register VC. And this segue has an identifier. So I'm going to call this guy register seg as his identifier. Okay. And now let's go into view controller. So remember this screen right here, his code behind is our view controller. Not to be confused with the UI view controller, as I don't like the fact that Apple makes their first view controller called view controller. I think it's confusing. And this guy's code behind is the file we created called register VC. Both of those guys are controllers. Just like our Angular stuff, they are the code behinds for this interface. Okay? So we're going to go into our view controller here, and this is another thing I don't like about Apple. See, you were all enamored with Apple. I'm going to keep complaining about this stuff. So the way those segues, the things that we like so much, getting from one screen to another, and they are convenient a lot of the time, they require us to have a piece of code that allows us to interject if we're interested. We created this file, register VC, and at the bottom of this, we're going to find that we have a commented out function for that segue if we're interested in it. There's no good reason for it not to be in that original one they gave us, but they have it deleted. So I'll just copy that, bring it back here. I can paste it in here, or I can also just come down here, and because I know the name of the function, it's prepare for segue, I can start typing it. It'll show it there, and I can press enter, and it'll fill it in for me. All right, but you had to know what the name of that guy was to do it. So the idea here is that this function gets called automatically once per segue when it's taken. All right. So when I click on the register button that's going to that second page, this code's going to get called before I arrive at that second page. And just to kind of show you how that works, I can go print segue.identifier. So we'll go ahead and do that. I don't know, do we do any printing so you can see stuff at the console? I don't remember, but so I'll go ahead and prove that we see that register seg thing gets in here, so we could ask questions. Let's say you have 4 segues leaving that first page. You might be interested in maybe only one of those segues. Do you want to do anything special with? So you might want to ask the question, if the segue is the register segue, I'll do something. Otherwise, just ignore it. I don't need to interject or anything. So just to prove real quick that this guy gets called, now that we actually have the code there, before, since it wasn't there, it just called the parent one. If I click register, it's on its way to the other page. We didn't see anything visually here, but if we go to the code, notice here, there's our register seg. All right, so that's that identifier we gave that guy. So we could always ask a question in here, if segue.identifier, and if we put the exclamation point on that guy, it's going to see how it's wrapped in something called an optional. Optionals mean that it potentially could be nil, could be nothing. They force you to what's called unwrap it. So since I know it'll have something in there, I'll say if segue.identifier, putting the exclamation point in there, will say, here, let me just prove to you what it does. If I print this and put the exclamation point, the optional thing won't be there anymore. It unwraps it from that optional container that it's in. So when I run this, you'll see the optional thing goes away. And just for the sake of sanity, let me drop that guy there just so we can see it next to stuffish. Yeah, this will be good enough. So when I click register, notice it says register seg now without the optional thing around it. So that's called optional unwrapping in Swift. It's a fancy way of saying some variables may not have a value, and since some variables may not have a value, we're going to put the value null or nil in Swift in there. We're going to force you to check to see if there's something in there before you can just use it. Or you can do what we just did and just assume there's something in there and put an exclamation point, and then it unwraps it for it, and if you hit a nil, it'll just crash. But if you know there's data in there, then you don't have to worry about it. All right, so this allows us to get to the segue identifier thingy. Now what we can do is we can ask the question, we can say if this guy is equal to register seg, no space, right? Okay, if it's equal to register seg, then we might choose to do something. What might we do? Well, we can go ahead and get our destination view controller. In this case, the place this segue is leading us to is register VC. So we can say let VC equal segue.destination view controller as a register VC. So this says get the destination view controller from our segue, and that guy will come out as a generic UI view controller, even though we happen to know it's a specialty UI view controller known as a register VC. All right, it's one of those guys. So this will give me a variable called VC of type register VC. Specifically, it's the place we're about to go to. So with that in mind, if I go into our register VC here, maybe I create a variable in this guy, var string to print, and that guy starts off as the empty string. And then in view did load, I decide to go ahead and print out self.string to print like this. As it stands, this would print out the empty string. I would see nothing. But what I can do is I can interject something inside view controller, and maybe I say vc.string to print is equal to woot, like that. So on the way to getting to that second screen, I've gone ahead and I've changed this instance of register VC string to print variable equal to woot. And run this. Click on register, and there's our woot. So we've effectively passed a value to that second screen. That make sense? All right, that's called variable injection. We've injected a value into that second screen. Another thing we can do is something called a singleton. Remember way back at the beginning of the class, we talked about design patterns the very first night. We kind of did like this crash course in like stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file up here because we'll probably end up using this. And we'll make this guy we'll choose iOS source, Cocoa touch class. He's going to be a generic NS object. So this is plain Jane object in Swift. And we're just going to call this guy core. I like naming my singletons something with core in it. Just it's a habit, I guess. And what we can do here is we can say var string to display maybe is equal to the empty string there. And then what we can do is inside of view controller, instead of injecting the value directly into our view controller, the place we're going to, instead of that, what we can do is we can set, and I need to go back to core. I need to make this guy static, so he only exists once. Instead, what we can do is we can say core dot string to display is equal to LOL, and then in register VC, when we print something, we won't print this local variable. Instead, we'll print core dot string to display. So we have this one object that's shared among all of the screens. All right. So that's a handy way of getting stuff from to share between multiple screens in an application. So there's our LOL. So we did that without injecting directly. All right. Make some sense? All right, so let's get our registration stuff and things like that in place. And I'm going to bring it in from another project. And then we'll walk through it from there. So just so we're clear on what we're trying to accomplish with the app here, this would be a kind of a duplicate of what our current one is, where we have a user side and an admin side. So user screens and admin screens, and well, at least user and provider screens like we have now. The admin screen's kind of loose right now, but kind of a duplicate of that, that people can request services and all that stuff on here. To me, this would be the preferred means of doing it, but our client wanted a website too, but whatever. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, let me just go ahead and open up a different project here. So this is a project that I've been working on, and I'm going to go ahead and grab, login, and register these two VCs. So I just dragged them into our other project. I'm going to make sure we select copy items if needed. Oh, sorry. So I'm going to go ahead and dump our register VC, move that to the trash. We'll try this again. Make sure you select copy. That's a pretty important tip. If you don't select copy, what you've effectively done is you've created a reference in another project. So if you try to send it to somebody, they won't have those files that live somewhere else on your hard drive. They have, they'll have something, it'll be in red over here on the left because it's linked to another file somewhere else on your computer rather than copying it into the project. Okay, oh, so it already copied the login one in apparently. I don't see either of them there. Let's kill that, let's close that. Let's open this one. Maybe we should copy one at a time. And with the same name already exists. Let me do this. Oh. Yeah, there's our login and our register. They're there, but they're not there. Okay. So let's try this again. Okay, that worked that time. And then we'll do the same thing with register. Okay, so these are code behinds. Now the next part might be a little bit more challenging because I have a storyboard over on this side. Copying things over from storyboards is actually a little bit trickier. Alright, so here's our login storyboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here, go into the view. I'm going to steal that guy. And I'm going to recreate it over on this side. So this guy is going to be controlled by our login VC. And here's our stuff that's in there, but I'm going to paste that guy I copied from the other thing. And hopefully good stuff happens. Okay. I wonder why nothing is actually showing up in here. Let's do some constraint stuff here. Ooh, it's like that stuff doesn't even exist. Look at that. Oh. Alright, so here's all those things. They're there. Let's create this stack. Alright, this seems to have gone quite poorly. Oh, I see why. Okay, we need to do, there we go. Take that guy out. here. We just want this stack view inside of this view. Let's see if that does it. You know, actually what we could do, this might be the quickest way of pulling this off. In Project Snowman, if I delete my storyboard, come over here, and I drag the storyboard in there, now I have a full storyboard that has a bunch of extra crap in it over here, but I can go and delete all the things except our login and register scenes. Oh no, you can do it. Bubbles. I'm not going to make it through class now. There's bubbles in the water. I filled it with bottled water. We have what, Hinkley Schmidt, you know, bottled water thing. Just, it's tainted. Okay. So there's that. Let's build this real quick. Okay, good. All right, so let me just make sure that this module thing is still hooked up for our storyboard. This guy has a bunch of stuff that's connected. These are all text fields and things like that. All right, perfect. So let's close this other guy. All right, so this already has Firebase stuff built into it, so I'm going to walk through it here in a few minutes. But right now, I tried to build it. We have a build error that says no module known as Firebase. So Firebase is an external product, right? For our Angular applications, what did we do? We did a script for it in our code to bring in the Firebase, the Angular Firebase stuff, that kind of jazz. Well, we need to get the Firebase API for iOS into our application. And there's the right way of doing this, and then there's the junky way of doing this. All right, the right way of doing this is using something called Cocoapods. The junky way of doing this is to use Apple's way of doing it. Right? Apple's way of doing it would have you download from GitHub the Firebase project, drop it in here, bring it into your project. The Firebase project is actually written in Objective-C. So it's the older iOS development language. So then you'd have to create what's called a bridging header in your code, that because a Swift project is allowed to read from Objective-C. Okay? But you can create a bridging header, let it know about your Objective-C library, then you'd be able to use it in your code. Not the end of the world, probably a 15-minute production. What we're going to do, though, is we're going to go out to our code here. And I really wish I hadn't done that. Oh well, that ship has sailed. Dropbox. And then I lost 15 seconds of my life there. All right, so we'll go into our iOS app. So what we're going to do is, and let's go with this is the actual iOS app in here. We're going to use Cocoapods to do this, and I'll just show you quickly on the website how you would get Cocoapods for those of you who are doing this on your own machines or something like that. So Cocoapods you'll actually install on your Mac with Ruby, just using this command right here, sudo gem install Cocoapods. All right, I already have it on here. I use it pretty often. So assume I've already put that command in and it's installed Cocoapods. And what Cocoapods is it's a package manager similar to NPM. We've messed with NPM for Node. It's basically NPM for iPhone projects. Okay. So what I'm going to do out here is I'm going to say pod init. And this is going to create a new, let's call it repository-like thing for Cocoapods in here. Most important to us is it created a file called pod file. This guy right here. And inside of pod file, so I'll go ahead and edit this file. I always do, don't I? Yeah, no, that's not what the cool kids do. Cool kids use Vi. Yeah.
It's true.
How many of you in here have ever used VI as a text editor? 1.5 people. Do you like it?
No, not really. Why would I have?
See, it's funny because when I was younger and I listened to professors who would talk about things like that, I thought they were nuts too. But then I did Unix system administration for so long, I got so used to Vi, I get so much better than other editors. I'm fast at it. You know, when I go to save stuff, it's, you know, to save something, you hit escape, :WQ. So that's right quit. And then you're back out.
I would say it's faster, but it has a learning curve.
That's it. The learning curve is the problem. And it doesn't do auto indentation. So there's a point here where it maybe is less helpful. Now, for Swift, so it gives you a starting file here. For Swift, you need to make sure you uncomment this use frameworks line, and it tells you to do that. Uncomment this line if you're using Swift. That makes it so you don't have to do that bridging header thing I talked about. And then what we're going to do here is we're just going to say pod Firebase. All right, that happens to be the name of Firebase's pod. And if I go in here to Cocoapods, and you just search Firebase, here you have Firebase, and you also have Firebase UI, which is a thing that allows you to have list views. They're called table views on iOS. They're called list views on Android. That auto update when the project stops, when your database changes. We can write it ourselves too, but we're just going to use Firebase for right now. We'll add other things if we need it. So I'll do pod Firebase, and it is capital F, the rest of it's lowercase. So I'll do quit there. So now all you do is once your pod file has all the pods you want it to keep up to date in here, you just do pod install the first time. And then it's pod update after that. So it's going to go and grab the Firebase stuff, and it's going to bring it down into a pod project in here. And it's going to build a brand new, what's called a workspace when all is said and done. So it wants me to close my current Xcode session because my Xcode session has opened up Project Snowman, the Xcode project. I'm now going to open up Project Snowman, the workspace, which has the original Project Snowman Xcode project in it, as well as this new pods project that complements it. All right. So we'll go in here. I'll just close our Project Snowman. Come back out here to the command line. If I type ls, notice we have this new dude here called workspace. From this point forward, we'll just always open that guy. So open that. And notice there's two projects in here, Project Snowman and Pods. we never have to go in and mess with the pods project. That's where our pod file is. So now we can edit our pod file in here if that makes you happier. But here's our original project. Nothing's really changed in here, with the exception that it should compile now because it's now heard of Firebase. Oh.
You might have to build it without.
Hold on, this is not an issue. We base ref.
You put 4 in your file.
No, I need to bring in the core file from my the other project. So I'm going to kill off our useless little core guy here, and let me just quickly reopen our Communify one here. And I'll just copy his core over here. Copy if needed. Now it should be happier. One thing we do need to do, and I should just do it right now, is we want to go ahead and change the base URL to be the one for our project, not this other guy's project. So let me go to Firebase real quick. Actually, we should have it in our code here.
Should just be some project Showman, right? Project Showman.
Yep, this guy. So that's our base for our project. So I'll just change that code right there, and everything else should be good. This user profile, that's not applicable to our project. So I have a thing for validating to make sure they put in a real email address and all that jazz. String to display. Okay, yeah, let's just get rid of our prepare for segue stuff. We don't need it for this first screen right now. Okay, and I think we are back to a functioning project now. So we'll go iPhone 6. So right now our project just has 2 screens in it, a login and a register, and all those things should currently be hooked up. So I'll go ahead and hit play on this. And let's see what it looks like if everything came over all right. All right, so I have, for testing, I usually hard code in the testing account I'm logging with, so I have to type it a zillion times. So for us, we want to go ahead and register an account. So register takes us to this screen. If I hit create, it already gives us pop-ups. You must enter an email address. So I'll enter an email address, Bob. It's going to yell at me, you must enter a valid email address. So it's already doing the checking for all that stuff. So let's go ahead and register a user under my email. Password, we'll do ABC123. Confirm password, AB. Well, here, if I don't do the confirm password, try to hit create, you must confirm your password. So all the error checking is already there. We'll hit create. Account successfully created. You may now log in. So it takes us back here. I should be able to log in with that account. Let's pretend like I forgot my password though. So one thing that should have just happened, actually I'll prove it here in a second. Let's go ahead and log in with ABC123. And if I try to log in, let's see, what's the guy's problem?
Because you're trying to send it to a different page that's not there.
It could be. Doesn't contain it. Yeah, it does. That is the problem. But I don't think it should actually let us log in right now anyway. So let me just go into the login screen for a second. And we'll walk through this in a minute. Let's just get it to the point where it's, yeah, this is the post login stuff. This is where it was trying to take us. So I'll just take that out for now. That's not applicable for us.
Password right.
Password is right. It shouldn't take us anywhere right now. I was just expecting it not to let us log in. At least I thought. Pretty sure they force you to
Force you to what?
validate your email address.
No. doesn't make you do it on your email.
I might be able to
Online.
have a setting to do that, but I don't think by default it's set to that.
Okay, here, let me go into that because that actually is a fairly helpful setting for another thing that's in here. So let's get that caught up to that. So here's our login and auth. So enable email and password authentication. Yeah, here's password reset. So that's already built into my thing, but I thought they forced you to. Oh, here's Project Snowman. So there's our new user here. Where was that? Let's see if they sent an email. See, the issue is like right now, this will work. So let's say I forgot my my username or my password. I can do forgot password. I can put in my email address. And I'll send. Right. But the issue is that if we don't force them to initially validate their email address, there's no guarantee that'll work. So now I should have just gotten an email from this to reset my password. Actually, I think it gives you a temporary password. Yeah, no reply, Project Snowman, reset your password, blah, blah, blah. So, but in the end, it gives you, it's like a 24-hour thing. But the issue with that is if I originally signed up with a bad email that I'm not able to check, there's no way for me to reset my password without contacting the admin person or something like that. So just be aware of that. There is a way to force. Let's see.
I'm reading that Firebase does not provide that functionality.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have to just trust they put in a real email.
I mean, you could.
Well, I mean, it doesn't really matter. This works.
Oh, yeah, you have to trust them to put it
Yeah.
in an actual email.
Yeah, I'm just saying that the issue that we would have with this is that if the person put in an email that they're not able to check, they're never going to be able to reset their password themselves. They would have to contact the admin who would go into Firebase and do it by hand.
There's one, I mean, I don't know if we want to do this, because it seems like a little bit of extra work, at least on there and sign up. You can have it, so they'll put in whatever password, you can pretty much ignore whatever password they put in, then send them a reset password email, and then they can put the password in there.
Yeah, not important. Just something for us as developers to understand that the way passwords are reset on here, an admin can come in here and manually reset a password for a user. So it's not like they're completely lost. But the admin would have to probably come in here and they could be, because can we edit a user? I can reset the password. So if I click that, I think the email just got sent. But is there a way for me to actually change this user's email? And that seems to be a pretty bad setup. So if they put in a bad email day one, that's all she wrote. Your account is dead for forever, I guess.
I mean, they could just create a new one. That would be it.
Well, that could be true, but let's say you've been operating for a year and a half without forgetting your password. Now you forgot your password, and there's no way to recover your password. Because they can't send you the password reset thing because you can't check that email. Yeah, it's kind of a bad setup, but we won't worry about that. We're just going to assume it's okay. Okay. So at this point, just to walk through authentication and how it's working on here. We'll do this on let's do this on the register side of things first, just to understand how registering works. So here's a function I have in here for validating the form. So this guy goes through and makes sure that the email text field has stuff in it, make sure that the email that they gave you, if it does have stuff, is a valid email, and I have a function that confirms that that's a valid email inside of our singleton core. So that's this guy right here. It makes sure this is a regular expression that determines whether something is a valid email address. And then we compare it against this thing called NS predicate, which is a true-false thing. So this ultimately returns true if what they provided is a valid, syntactically valid email address. That doesn't mean that it's an email that they're able to check, but it means it's a legitimate email looking thing. All right, so back here in login. So this is the whole valid, I'm sorry, I want to do register, finish register first. So this whole thing just goes through and checks all the possible things that could go wrong with that form. You know, email addresses don't match, email addresses aren't valid email addresses, you didn't fill everything in, all that jazz. All right, when they finally hit the create button, the very first thing it says is if you validate that the form is validated, then we're going to go on and do some stuff. All right, so as soon as we get past the warden here, then we come in here and this should look relatively similar to some of the stuff we've dealt with on the Angular side. So we're creating our reference. This is our core Firebase ref. So I'm just giving it as a local variable. So in core Firebase, we have our Firebase URL. All right, then I'm using that URL to create a new user whose username is this email, whose password is this text. So I'm passing in those two things. And then this guy gets a completion block when it's finished. So as soon as it's finished trying to create that account, it's going to call this function in here. If there was an error, well, if there was not an error, then we'll, if error is not equal to nil, then error would have something in it. Then we'll go ahead and print out our error view, what the issue was. So localized description is like a human readable error message, and then I change the color to red. Else, everything must have worked. So we do a alert pop-up thing that says success, your account was created, you can now log in, and then you can click the OK button, and this is an action, and when you hit that OK button, it tells this screen to go ahead and dismiss itself, so it goes back to the login screen because we're currently sitting on the register screen. And then I go ahead and, after I've built that alert, I go ahead and present that alert on the screen, letting them know everything's cool. You now have an account. All right, so that's the whole registration screen of this app. Login screen. So we have these IB outlets for all of our username, password, all this stuff, just like we did on the register thing. So this is how we programmatically access things that are on our screen. All right, so this is what's the word I'm looking? Design pattern. What's the design pattern I'm looking for? MVC, Model View Controller. So this is the controller. The view would be what we're seeing. The model would be the stuff on Firebase. All right, so this is our way of programmatically accessing the widgets that are on our screen. All right, when view did load here, we're letting our global guy know about our storyboard. This has nothing to do with anything you're seeing at this point, but at a later point in time, we might get to a place. We're going to use storyboards sometimes. In fact, you're going to see it here in a minute. We use the storyboard object itself to build another view controller. So we're about to design our like homepage view controller that we're gonna land on. And because we're not using that whole control click thing to get there, because we're getting there as a result of successfully logging in, we need to have a means of creating that homepage view controller. Okay, so sometimes, depending on the context we're in, we might not have access to that storyboard. That'll make sense when we get to that route, but that's why I store the storyboard in our singleton, so that if we ever did need access to it in an area where we couldn't say self that storyboard, we still have access to it in this global variable. All right, so view did load. This is where things first happen in our application. So we'll set our reset password stack view to hidden. So this is the whole thing that this guy here. So when I say forgot password, the stack view shows up. When I hit cancel, the stack view goes hidden. So it's hidden by default. So this whole thing is in a stack view, and then within that there's a stack view right in here that's currently hidden. And when I click forget password, it unhides. Okay. So similar to what we had in the register thing, here's your validate login form. We're going to make sure you put crap in there before we try to log you in. You have to make sure you fill in your username and password before we'll even let you try to log in. We technically probably could check this against being a valid email address as well. And then ultimately when they click the login button, as long as the form was validated, we'll go ahead and get our Firebase reference. We'll call auth user, passing it the username, passing it the password. It'll come back with our completion block. If there's an error, we do this stuff. Otherwise, I'm setting us to this local function just called post login setup, which currently has nothing in it. This is going to be the guy that sends us to our successfully logged in page.
Do you want to send it to, you want to post data to Firebase then too, once it's been signed up? Because
It is posted to Firebase. This all connects to Firebase.
Yes, but you know how we added that one section where it was the role. You want to?
Yeah, we're going to have to update it for our role because right now that, so let's actually do that here. So when somebody signs up here, we're going to have to let them sign up as either a provider or a user, right? All right, so we need to give them a little bit of a extra little thing here. At least this gave us a decent starting point. So go into our data. So we have this thing for a role.
That's their auth data. That's their unique ID. It's not a push. It's their user ID. Basically.
Okay, so this is their user ID and this is their role. Okay. So when we create a user, we're going to have a way of having the user being created when we register a user, either a user or a provider for us. So let's go ahead into our storyboard and let's give them a way for them to tell us that for starters. So here's our register storyboard. Wonder why we can't see anything. So this guy is our email text field. And when this first pops up, if I go to register, this says email, confirm email, password.
That's the order it's in. Email, confirm.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why we can't actually see it. When I copied it over, something didn't get, like this view's in a weird state right now.
Shows there's an error at the top.
Where?
Right, mouse over it. You see where it shows like the folder structure at the top, right
An
below.
internal error occurred. Editing functionality may be limited.
I don't, give me a direction on the
Straight
screen.
Down, too high.
Right there. Up.
Oh, here.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's kill Xcode and reopen it. I bet you that'll fix it. Probably because we were removing storyboards and then bringing them back. I think everything should be in decent working order. Make sure we're opening the workspace for our Project Snowman. There we go. That looks better. Okay, so after we put in this stuff, we need to have an additional thing for determining whether or not they are a user or a provider. So maybe do a switch for that. So I'm going to go ahead and that'll be after confirm password. So let's throw this switch right here. Come on. Nailed it. All right, and let's put a label right before it. Oh, it doesn't matter. Let's just get it on there. And another label. Okay. And this is going to be user. This will be provider. And we want the switch to be sitting in between those two. And we'll go ahead and embed these guys in a stack view. The stack view is going to default to think it's a vertical stack view, but I'll change it to be a horizontal stack view. And then we will, let's do fill equally. See what that looks like. Yeah. Equals centering. Yeah, could be worse. Actually wonder. I don't know if a switch makes the most sense there.
What else would you use?
With something called a segmented control. This guy.
So it gets dark blue depending on which one they
Yeah, so we'll say user
Oh, segment 0. It's
oh, I get it. And then provider. Okay, and maybe right above that we have a label that just says role. We're going to make this guy heavy and centered. And this guy by default, let's see, I think this needs to be, I think we need to make our initial, okay, so it's going to be, user is going to be the default. So that guy should be selected by default. So let's go ahead and add any constraints that are missing. Looks like everything is fine. Come on. Did I hit play? Oh, maybe I didn't hit play. Register now. User is the default. We can flip to. That is. Okay. So now, upon successful registration, we'll then write the correct role to Firebase. So let's actually go into Firebase here. Go down to login and auth. Let's get rid of this user. Okay. Then in register VC,
You have to click and drag that into it.
yeah, I need to give myself access to that segmented control. So we'll click on here, we'll click on here, give ourselves the little sliver in here. This works out better on a higher resolution screen. And this is role segments. Okay. So now we have access to the current state of that guy. Okay. So this is actual registration. So on success, do we actually get the user? Because we're going to
It
need.
should be result. It should be in result.
Oh, yeah,
Result,
it should be.
not all data. Result. It's that left right there.
Yeah, I get it. But its thing is called auth data.
It's result. No, it's if you go back, the UID right there. And I think it's in brackets because.
Oh, it's a
array.
dictionary. So it's that?
Yeah.
Okay. So we need to go ahead and write something to our. So we need to create a new ref that's a child of our thing called roles. So here's our data here. All right, so roll. So we're going to say let role equal ref dot child by appending path role, right? And then we can say role dot, and it's not going to be auto ID. It's going to be child by appending.
That would be
the user ID.
Yeah.
So this is going to be result UID.
Yeah, and then dot.
And what do we call this guy over here? Just there's our
data. It's gonna be dot. That's the UID, and then it's gonna be dot.
what, value or something.
You need the go parenthesis over.
Going to do what?
Go over the parenthesis, and then that's dot value.
Oh, it's okay. I got you. So value, just set value.
Yeah.
And the value for this guy is going to be our segmented control. So we need to grab that first. Var role is equal to user if self dot role segments dot selected segment index is equal to 1. Role is equal to provider. So we'll assume it's user unless they've selected segment 1 instead of segment 0. So then right here we can say role.
Change the let role to let role ref.
Well, because we have our.
Yeah, and then you have to change it one more spot.
Hold on a second. I clicked on something. There's no subscript. Okay, so it doesn't like this because result must have a value in a.
As string.
Is that what the guy comes out as?
I'm guessing that's what you have commented out right there.
Oh, funny. All right, so we'll figure out what our role is. We'll assume it's user unless we are proven otherwise. So after this line, role will be user or provider. Then we'll have our role ref, which is going to be our child by appending path. And then we'll append onto that a user ID with an associated value of whatever their role is. Okay. So this is going to need to be part of our authentication as well, but let's at least get them registered correctly. Let's see. Do we need to push that guy, right? Or is that already created?
No, that should work.
Oh. Did I actually do anything bad there? I'm like missing keys all over the place. Okay, so let's go ahead and try to register and see if we have the role set correctly. We'll register 2 different users. New user at user.com, new user at user.com, ABC123, role will be user, we'll click create. Alright, so let's go look at that dude. So I'm guessing it's one of those. So our new guy there is
Refresh.
So this is our C120. C120 is a user. Perfect. And then let's register a new provider at user.com. New provider at user.com. ABC123. Make that guy a provider. Email matches new. Told you I'm missing keys. Okay. And we have another provider. More than likely it's legit. Okay, so now let's make sure we know what kind of guy we are so we can actually go to our next screen. So before we do that, let's go into our code and let's build 2 kind of landing screens for those guys. So down here, we want to go to either a user screen or a provider screen. So we'll make this our user screen. And this. And then this will be our provider screen. Like this. And let's go ahead and just give ourselves a nav bar so we can tell them apart. So we're going to call this guy provider. And we'll call this guy user. Let's go ahead and build some code behinds for both of them. We'll call this guy user VC and we'll call this guy provider VC. So new file, Cocoapods class. This guy's going to be a subclass of UI view controller. And this is going to be called user VC. Oh, did I spell that funny? Felt like I spelled that. No, I didn't. Complete luck that I hit all those keys. And then we'll create another one for provider VC. Okay. Now, this is where that storyboard thing comes in. I'm going to let both of these guys know that this guy's no longer a generic UI view controller. He's now a user VC. This guy's no longer a generic view controller. He's a provider VC. Now we have programmatic control over them behind with the controllers. But I'm also going to give these guys a storyboard ID. I'm going to name their storyboard ID the same as they are. So that guy will be called provider VC. This guy will be called user VC. And what this allows us to do is it allows us to programmatically ask the storyboard to create an instance of one of these guys, so we can have them show up on the screen, because we don't have the luxury of being able to do the control click thing, because we don't know at this point in time what kind of person's logging in. We don't know if they're going to be a user or if they're going to be a provider. Make sense? So we need to go ahead and decide who they are. So we'll go back into our login VC. And so when we get into post login setup, so here's where we're actually logging them in. So we should have the auth data. And in that auth data, we should have their UID, correct? And that UID now needs to be used to grab their actual role. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and throw their auth data in the cloud, in our, well, not in the cloud, but in our, in this guy right here. So what kind of animal is auth data? Is it a Firebase object maybe? Let's do this. I'm going to print. The auth data is a f-auth data. That's the type of object that is, f-auth data. So we're going to go into our core here, and we'll say static var auth data. This is f-auth data. That's what that guy is. So I'm saying create a variable owned by this class. That's why I have static in front of it. And he is of type f-auth data. And I promise you I will set him. Okay, that's what that exclamation point, remember I mentioned earlier about those things with optionals? I'm explicitly saying I'm not going to use an optional. So I will give you that value before I try to use that value. So now here in login VC, we can now set, if we're logged in right before we go into post login setup, let's go ahead and set core.auth data equal to auth data. And then what we can do is we'll call post login setup. And what this guy needs to do is it needs to figure out what role this dude is. Okay, what the guy's current role is. So we're going to need to talk to Firebase to get that. Correct? So we're going to say actually we can steal a lot of that from register. So let role ref is this. All right, and then we're going to say role ref dot come on. Oh, I don't have ref right here. I need to core dot Firebase ref. That'll be good enough. And I need to say child. I do query ordered by child to get and give it the auth user ID, right? Core auth data UID as string, like that. What is that going to give me back?
It's saying that the auth data UID isn't. Like, is that
Let's
auth
steal
data
this
that
for a
UID?
second.
That could be what it is. Core.authData.UID. The reason it was
Well, we'll find out here real quick. No, it's not UID. Actually, it's acting like it is. All right, but this guy, I need to get his value.
That is value, isn't it?
Well, it wants value for key, so I need to store this. So let roll is equal to this guy. And then I can print out roll. Let's just see what we get. So we're asking what the role of this guy is so we can make sure we take him to the right place in our code. Why is that getting set up right off the bat? Oh, because I have auto login turned on. Yeah, for right now, let me turn off auto login because the guy who's currently logged in doesn't have a role. Actually, he should have a role. Yeah, he should have a role. So with that in mind, it looks like, oh, core auth data doesn't have a value. It's this guy. So we actually don't need to store auth data. We can get at our auth data through other means. Let's see, where's the, yeah. We don't need to store auth data in core because we can ask our ref for that auth data. We're doing it right here. So we actually want that guy. The reason it crashed is because our core.auth data didn't have a value because we were only setting that when we went through the normal login process. So now this should tell us, I think provider was the last guy we logged in with. Okay, so this is the E34, that should be the user ID.
E3, Did you not refresh?
Well, I shouldn't have to refresh Firebase. So this isn't pulling from role correctly. So this gets our role. Query ordered by child. We basically did that below, right?
They have all these. They have a observer for it.
Let's back up here for a second. We should generate a reference to a view. Oh, I see. So that gets our role. Then we need to say role dot observer event type.
I'm surprised though. You think that'd be? You think you could just do it. It's a dot value.
I wonder why that's not popping up though for me. Dot value like that.
It might be capitalized.
Usually you can type this stuff in. So F event type. I should be able to say something like, so it's not liking something in this layout. this real quick. That's on child added. Oh, it's like a string type. Oh, this is not iOS. Firebase. There we go. Yeah, this is the Objective-C version. Yeah, so dot value. Wonder why it's not completing it. Like usually you should type in dot and it will fill in the rest of that.
Is that the right one though?
Use of undeclared F data snapshot. Oh, the problem is we don't have Firebase in here. Yeah, I bet you now if I type in dot, it's gonna give you a whole list of stuff. Nice. All right, so once we have our value, that's going to be in our snapshot. Print snapshot.
That value.
Probably going to be an optional, but we should still be able to see it. Oh, what was this? New
user. User.com.
Yeah, so that got us quite a bit of stuff. That got us everything.
Yes, that's by every role. That's every role within there. So you have to find the one with the value that we want.
All right, so we need to compare. So this is the value. Well, no, that's the value that's printing out, right?
Yes.
Printed it twice.
I think there's a
So
way.
the child would be the Firebase all data that you.
Oh, here we could do this.
What if you?
No, we can do this.
Can you print role?
Child by appending path
And that would be the
core.firebase ref.auth data dot UID.
that's the reference for that user's role.
So now we could just say query ordered by key, because we should only get one. It's going to get pretty annoying. Oh, there it is, user. It did auto-log us in, we just didn't show up to anything. Like, we're not going anyplace. So there's our snapshot value, so we can go ahead and just let user role, well actually we can just do it off snapshot. So we say if snapshot is equal to user, do one thing,
Is it snapshot or
snapshot.
value?
I think we need to say as string, else. I'm going to be explicit about it since we might add an admin thing in as well. Okay, so if it's a user, we want to go to the user page. If it's a provider, we want to go to the provider page. So what we're going to do is we're going to say let VC equal self.storyboard.instantiate view controller with identifier. What identifier? User VC as a user VC. And we're not going to inject anything special here, so we'll just do self.present view controller. Which view controller? VC animated, true. Anything upon completion? No. So we'll just set that to nil. What's this guy complaining about? What do I currently have there? Oh, I just have as usually. Yeah, you gotta have that in there. Okay, and then this is going to be the provider VC as a provider VC, and we'll show that screen. So now if we log in as a user, we'll go ahead and create the main user screen and present it from the login screen. If we log in as a provider, we'll create our provider screen and show that on the screen. So let's go ahead and log in again. I think we're currently logged in as a user, so it should take us immediately to the user screen. So there's our user screen. We'll probably need to have a logout button on our on basically all of our screens. So actually this is a good opportunity to show you something else here in our last few minutes. Here, I'm going to steal it from that other project just to give me a quick starting point. Another nice thing that Swift lets you do is it lets you augment existing classes. So for instance, we might decide that it's handy for us to be able to log out from any view controller in our application. Certainly, we probably want to be able to log out if we're in as a user or in as a provider, right? So those are at least two separate view controllers that we might want to log out of the application from. So I'm going to go in here. Where do I keep that? Class extensions. Use this guy in here, copy if needed. Shut that now. Okay, so I have this class extension called UI View Controller. Nice thing here is you have I put in the standard cancel button thing, so any screen can dismiss the previous screen, like with a cancel button. We'll go ahead and also do the log out from. Okay, so we'll do import Firebase, and then let's go ahead and do. It'll be I'll steal this code here. All right, we'll call this guy Firebase logout. And we'll say core.firebase.ref.unauth. All right, so that should log us out. And then we need to get back to our main screen. So we can say core.storyboard. How do we?
There's a command that dismisses all view controllers. Do self.view. Yeah, it's kind of messy. If you want me to.
Well, this okay. So self.view.
Window. And you have to give it root view controller, and the question mark, and then dismiss view controller animated. That will go back to whatever the home, the very, very first screen is.
Okay. So let's give that the college try. So we'll log them out, and then we'll go back to the very first screen no matter where we are in the application. Okay, so we've extended the standard UI view controller so that any screen in our application will allow us to log out from that screen. So now what we can do is we can go into our storyboard and slide this guy in. We'll go ahead and give ourselves a bar button item. And we'll say log out on that guy. And we'll do the same thing over here. And if I click on this, this guy is a provider VC, which is a UI view controller. He will have a Firebase logout action now because we put that in the extension. Similarly, this guy will have a Firebase logout. We can just connect it up to that button. So let's do auto layouts for both of these. Let's run it. It should log us in as a provider. All right, the user. So now I hit log out. We're back to this main screen. We'll go ahead and log in as a new provider. So new provider at user.com. I think that's the same password. There's our provider screen. Log out takes us back. So it's determining which kind of user we are. Now, as a last step, so I can give you a project to reference for those of you who are doing iOS, but otherwise it doesn't necessarily benefit you directly. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to put this up on GitHub. So I'm going to come in here. We're going to go to GitHub. So we currently have our project Snowman. This could be a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new repository specifically for the iOS app. That way we can let Xcode manage it. So I'll come up here. We're going to call this new repository project snowman _ iOS. We'll go ahead and create that. Here's the name of my repository. So just to show you how this works on Xcode, so prepare to be upset, emo. We'll go ahead and go to our project snowman master. Oh, this is kind of interesting how there's. Yeah, I wonder if that was because I copied some stuff in, but so we'll add a remote origin, paste that guy in there, add the remote, done, source control, commit, initial, commit, also push to remotes. We need to make sure we choose the workspace here and also choose the pod file so it can keep the workspace together. And then just commit those files. So I'm going to get rid of that guy. I don't know where he's coming from, but we'll go ahead and what's my username and password for GitHub the first time? What's up?
You could probably just put awesome fat,
I don't know. That might be true.
or it's unlimited.
So that's it. And it goes a lot quicker for additional ones now because we won't have to log in or set up that remote. Yeah, so that guy is up there now. So for your homework, bring your user login screen up to date with where our web-based one is. That is showing, you know, the 3 or 4 lists of things depending on what your application is, for just to kind of give you a heads up, and I'll give you a link to this stuff. For those of you who are doing iOS, so iOS UI table view tutorial. So I'll give you this link. So you'll probably want to do this with a UI table view for iOS. And then for Android, you'll do a list view. And that'll be off the developer site. So this allows you to create something that will, they'll probably give you a picture here somewhere. Something that ultimately looks like this, that has a list of stuff. So you'll probably have a scroll list showing the thing, your requests that are out there, maybe with a little button at the top that says request a new one. So maybe do that. How about for next week, just show pending requests with the ability to ask for a new request, but do it the Android or the iOS way. All right, you don't have to worry about the other things. They're just going to be duplicates of that, but that should get you where you need to go. And I'll post links to tutorials for both of those. Questions, comments, concerns, bribes? All right, I will see everybody next week.